Hi guys, my name is Becc. Thank you for being here. Today I want to share with you about some visions that I have experienced and also some messages and words of wisdom about that have come from the Pleiadian Council. So whilst these visions may sound a little alarming at first, potentially, I really urge you to continue listening to the rest of the message, as we are in a time where there is a lot changing, there is a lot shifting. It can feel quite chaotic. And a lot of this is to do with the fact that there are timelines that are trying to solidify at this time. It's kind of like they've been thinking about it. And now they're really trying to come into matter. And I'm doing this because the vision I was seeing about that is kind of just a crossing of two paths. And this crossing of two paths creates a birthing or a synergistic force that creates a birthing of new world or new life, new worlds, new life. And so that's kind of a big part of what's happening with the harmonics and the energy at this time. And it's really typical in this kind of experience, as this isn't the first time that this has happened, that many things, many illusions fall away, many doorways open to travel along a different path or a certain path. And it's very typical that the darker energies or people that have been in a place of influence in our collective consciousness and in our society, which is just a reflection of what's been happening in the collective consciousness during this time of darkness and spirituality not being at the front of our awareness. These people tend to do everything they possibly can to try to prevent the inevitable spiritual evolution that occurs in this universe time and time again. And we're just at that point where this convergence and this evolution is occurring. My guides call it the time of the changing suns. And it's actually, if you look back in the past with mythology, but also just if you have psychic ability, you'll see that this has happened many times. And so the visions that I want to share with you today are regarding some potential intended manipulations that those groups or people that I mentioned would like to, I guess, do upon or force upon the collective consciousness and the people of Earth. And as I said, there's also a message regarding all of this from the Pleiadian Council. So I'm just going to go into it and we'll just go from there. So I received a vision / message where what I was seeing was a very huge kind of image of the being that we would recognize as Jesus or Yeshua kind of coming down from the sky. But my nose is really itchy. In this vision, he's coming down from the sky, but the energy of it was so yucky, and it was not Yeshua, it was not that being. But in this vision, and the whole message of the vision was essentially that there is a potential that these groups would like to kind of perform a false second coming of Jesus Christ, or a false rapture, or whatever other words there are for that experience that in the Christian religion and the Christian doctrine, the books, they interpret it as, many people interpret it as Yeshua returning, really returning to Earth. And those who have been following Jesus would potentially fly into heaven at that point, or that's about as much as I know about that. But the point is that there's an intention to flow this kind of big projection of Yeshua. So when I say projection, I mean kind of like through illusion tools, so digital tools, holographic tools, this kind of thing, and potentially other technologies that they may have received or been working with more advanced beings who can really put on quite the light show. And I saw this and I was like, wow, that is really terrible and harmful. And I personally, I just think it's so gross. Like, it just is. And the energy is very, very unhealthy. And when I was looking at this, what I was receiving, that this would be an intention to, regain more power, to hold the power that they currently have or think that they have, through that kind of manipulation. But also a big part of the key thing there was to distort our connection or take advantage of the connection that most humans have with the being Jesus or Yeshua. Even if you're not a Christian, it is something in our human collective consciousness that is very meaningful. Most of us have at least heard the name at least once, which is just a reflection of the impact that his presence and also the distortions that happened after has had on our collective consciousness and our collective true history. And so if they can manipulate that connection and make you think that this being or projection is Yeshua and it's all real, that's one option to have more control over the consciousness of man. And to instill fear, that would be very traumatic if that appeared in the sky. People are not ready to cope with that. It would be very confusing because a lot of people would not be able to tell that that was a false event. I did sense following that there would be people and groups of people that would be very critical of that and would kind of investigate the same way that there are those amazing truth speakers who have done the same thing with various other conspiracies, including the COVID thing that we're experiencing. And kind of there would be a knowing of the truth there, but unfortunately many people would be manipulated. And it does have to do with our relationship with that being. The impact that Christ had on our consciousness and his pathway of his essence, of his energy, is directly connected to our continuing path of evolution. Like, he was a teacher of ascension, and that's where we are now. He came to embody great light, really great light. He embodied the energy and all the beauty and the energy and the love of the God force that is in the sun. And the sun is a huge factor in our consciousness. The sun represents our connection with our higher self. It is full of warmth and love. We love the sun because it is us. It is your spirit. As each planet represents certain things or holds certain energies, I should say, the sun is holding that higher self light, and the remembrance of that. And that's why in the time of the changing suns, it is the sun that acts as a mediator to shift our consciousness by awakening previously sort of debris covered DNA, which then shifts our consciousness and makes us more available to more light and all sorts of beautiful things, the ascension process. And so obviously if you were to manipulate the connection that we have with this being that really embodied and was holding key tones of the sun in his life, and that kind of leaves an energetic imprint or like a message in a bottle, like a gift in our consciousness, in our collective consciousness, for us to follow that energetic pathway that he built up. And if that gets distorted, it is energetically going to distort as well. Everything that we see that, and our minds are affected and our thoughts are affected in that moment of a second coming, and then that affects the energies. Everything is mirrored. Okay, so it will affect not only our mental relationship, but then our emotional relationship and our energetic and spiritual relationship. And I would say, or you could perceive that that's the true intention with that kind of manipulation. is to distort that energetic connection, because it connects us to our ascension process in many ways. It is a gift that was given. And he is just such a loving, pure gift into our consciousness. And I'm just moved because when I speak of him and I feel him, there is a radiance and a warmth and an unconditional love that was represented by the light that he is. And so I just sense that I received these messages or visions because it's just important for us to know. And this is a time where these kind of things that sound like, oh, one of those conspiracies or things that people sort of predict and you're kind of like, oh, it's never going to happen. These things can shift and change and they can take a long time, but we are in that rapid sort of condensed time. So I do sense that if they were the groups of people who would want to do this, would to take this particular path, that it would be sooner rather than later. I think at the moment there's kind of a toss-up between what they want to do with that, or two potentials, because the other really strong, this one feels stronger, potential that I see and sense, and I have spoken about in I have a YouTube video quite a while ago now called, I think it's called False Mass ET Attack or ET Invasion. And it was basically the same idea. I'd received visions of the same sort of thing, that these groups would want to project into the sky false sort of holographic and digital light show stuff of extra dimensional beings coming down and potentially attacking us, and obviously instilling that same fear and confusion and save me government, kind of, in the sense that then people would do that and give that power to them. It would distort our connection with extra dimensional beings who are a part of our evolution too. So it's the same idea, and I just wanted to share this second vision that I had regarding this other option of a rapture of sorts. And when I listened further and deeper around all of this, the message I was getting, I'm looking down at my notes, is coming from the Pleiadian Council, which makes sense. They were the ones that brought this other ET mass invasion, false invasion vision to me previously. They were saying that there's a great gift in this time. The gift of this time is to have experiences such as these that allow you to tell your own truth through your vision, to discern truth and cultivate the ability to have clear vision and to see truth and feel truth. That is the gift and the blessings of this kind of experience, should that happen. And obviously that's already happening in smaller ways with less dramatic but still very impactful distortions. So they were saying that to alleviate through free choice, we alleviate suffering rather through free choice. It's the ability to see clearly then gives you the freedom to choose. Freedom is to have a choice. And if we do not see clearly, we aren't even seeing, and we can't even see that we have choice, and we don't make choice. And so it gives us the gift of choice as well, which does speak larger to this, the choice of timelines as well. That's, a lot of this is about choice, and what is humanity, what are you as a person going to choose? And you could summarize it down to love or fear, light or dark, trauma and suffering, or letting go and ascension. So we have all these confusing experiences actually to birth the gift of, and the cultivation of the gift of seeing truth, knowing your truth, retaking ownership of your freedom to choose, your freedom to see clearly. And this returns our power. You have more power. And then the guides, the Pleiadians, were just giving advice on this kind of experience. And they were saying, if an experience that is supposedly divine or of a spiritual, extra-dimensional, loving divinity, if it does not give you emotions of sacred peace, of love, of blessing, of a harmonious, healthful feeling, of a higher perspective such as clarity or knowingness or truth, divine truth, if it doesn't give you any sense of purity, so stillness, ease, and the goodness and innocence of the love that is, and of people and of life, the true nature of the life song. If you don't experience these kind of energies or emotions from that kind of experience, it is not of the light. That would not be of the light. It's normal and common to initially experience a feeling of maybe unsure or shock, but as soon as that softens, there should be an additional warmth and love and safety, held. Not a fearful safety, but a loving held. And they were also saying, so there's kind of like caveats to this kind of experience, to say that you'll always experience a positive emotion. What they're saying is to make room for that initial potential shock or something like that obviously happens. Just because things, even loving things, can be different and unfamiliar to you, to your consciousness. This kind of needs to be this like, whoa, like adjustment. It's actually like a consciousness energetic adjustment. And ideally we're able to allow that for that moment and then continue, with the message or receiving the love or whatever it is. And they were also saying that at times, a deeply spiritual event or interaction can trigger the release of lower vibrational or emotions, so cleansings can happen. So there can be a release of sadness or depression, or like sometimes people have an experience that's really awakening and then they go through a dark night of the soul. It's not that was a dangerous or damaging experience. It's that it's dissolving what isn't a match to the gift of that experience. And you can also tell as well that even if you have kind of a cleansing experience or a low experience, it should be that later on there is growth or a rebirth. So they were saying that there can even be destruction, so the destruction of the ego in such an experience, yet, or illusion. Yet it is always followed by rebirth. It always cultivates awakening. And so if an experience checks the boxes, but it doesn't do that, and you have lower emotions and it doesn't do that, if you have a divine experience and then you're just in destruction and there's no positive outcome, or there's no opportunity or potential for positive outcome, because also people can stay stuck. They don't have to take that invitation to rebirth. But if you don't sense that or experience even a glimmer of that, then that's another way to tell that usually this means that this was not a loving, positive experience. They were saying higher experiences always contain rebirth in destruction. So they were also saying that regarding this and regarding the interpretation of a spiritual event, there is an element here where and that's the painful thing about that manipulation, is that ability to discern needs to be already somewhat cultivated. And it's through experiences like that. It doesn't have to be on that massive scale, but it's through getting things wrong or being confused by a psychic experience briefly, or just doesn't have to be psychic, just someone lying to you and being tricked or whatever it is, that you develop the capacity to learn what truth feels like for you, what projections of your own mind and fearful, just wrong ideas or interpretations feel like for you energetically or emotionally. You learn the familiar frequency of truth and what is a true light and what is a false light. And so I'm just looking at my notes for one moment. Yeah, so the other thing is, and the reason that that's important is because people can experience what feel like good emotions or energies in a false experience. You know, so there are some people who might see like Yeshua or aliens or something appear and be really happy and excited because they're really scientific and they would love for that to happen. Um, so you can experience good emotions, but so we are required to discern. We are required to explore those emotions, to explore the experience or the light or not light, and look very deeply at our thoughts and the impact, as I was saying earlier, the impact or the outcome at the time or later of the event or experience. This is how we can learn to sense and know truth. Um, so another clearer way to look at it is to interpret something is to notice the emotions that you feel, to explore them fully, to observe and notice the thoughts as well, and to observe the outcome. Is it healthy or is it destructive? And making sure you give some room and time often for if there was a cleansing or a breaking down of an illusion or something you were attached to, because that can be painful initially. And then what we kind of do is we end up adding to our database of what light is and what light feels like. And what, as I said, what your mind's projections or mind translations are of energy and experience. So at this time, I think it's really important to develop, and the guides are saying, to develop your experience of, do you know what truth feels like in you? Do you know what it feels like when your mind is just projecting and interpreting stuff? Or do you, and how do you handle a psychic or spiritual experience? What's your process of filtering it and understanding it? What's your grounding thing that you do if you have a shocking experience? Because we want to be prepared for that kind of experience, but we should have these. That's the thing. These things are growth experiences for things that we need anyway. So we need to learn truth. We need to have clear vision. We need to know how to get through a potentially shocking, but potentially positive or negative event. So grounding and being connected to the earth. And yeah, they were also saying, speaking of earth, they were saying something fairly magical about interpretation and earth as well. They were saying that as Earth is singing her song more fully, and that means when the guides speak like this or I speak like this, we're speaking to the frequency or the harmonic or the tone of Earth, of her. They were saying that if you attune to it and you know it as divine and as you as well, you will then be able to perceive when something is out of the harmonic range, so out of her song, out of her frequency, out of resonance with Earth's true sound. And that it is not, if there were forces of light entering your world, these would be divine emanations, and you would hear the earth sing in resonance. So you would feel, and there would be this calmness, this freedom, this godlight, this naturalness to it. It would not feel out of place nor terrifying, though it may feel awe-inspiring and slightly shocking. It would be healthy and healthful and feeling enriching, and it would be matching Gaia's range. And again, this is probably something that you need to practice and you need to sense the difference between a natural energy and a distorted energy. The difference between it's just a feeling that we each have of our relationship with Earth and my connection to the Earth. Is this of Earth? Is this of God Force? They're kind of in the same light spectrum. So, and if it doesn't have those outcomes as well, then it is not healthful. I like the words or the way that they put it of out of place. It would not feel out of place. And you might think like, oh, but if aliens came down right now, it would definitely feel out of place even if they were benevolent. But that's the thing, and that's what we'll move into next, is that benevolent beings are not going to appear in the sky at a time where not enough of humanity is comfortable with that. So what they're saying is, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen like that until we're all quite comfortable, whether that's spiritual beings or extra-dimensional alien beings, until we're in a better place to receive it. And then it won't feel so out of place. Okay, that's how it could not feel out of place, because it would only happen at a time from benevolent beings where we are fully held, we are fully supported, we are fully in our own essence, and knowing that we are ascended beings, and knowing that any beings that come from the sky are family, or are loving beings and family, things like that. So the other note is from the guides, was saying that benevolent beings of all kinds will only want peace for humanity, and for humanity to grow at their own pace and their own choice. This is how these beings interact with us and get a sense of permission and readiness, or not permission and readiness. So they will only kind of go at the pace that we are. As I said, if that happened and things flew in the sky right now, too many people would freak out. It wouldn't be good for us. It wouldn't be loving for us. So that's not going to happen. They're also not going to work with, our current government, because it is corrupt. So when the government introduces these extra-dimensional beings and says, hey friends, if they go down that route, I would be very, very skeptical of that as well. At present, with extra-dimensional beings, including the Yeshua thing or divine experiences, they're tending to happen just on an individual level and in small groups, because it's got to be gradual. We're giving permission gradually, and they love you. They love you, so they're not going to frighten us. They were also saying that benevolent beings, they don't do things for humanity. They won't do it for you. They won't rescue us. They might guide and caretake, but they will empower us to find our own power and to trust ourselves, to make our own choices. They will encourage discernment, and they will not have any harmful secrecy that could or does create fear or confusion. They may have a kind of secrecy in that they don't reveal themselves till we're ready. They don't give certain informations until we're ready. They don't give too much information that would take us away from a growth experience, because of these loving reasons that I mentioned. But any secrecy, it's not even the right word, but any of that would not cause any fear or confusion or damage to us, unlike a malevolent being or malevolent interactions in our society from so-called benevolent beings. So I think that it's just very important that we listen to our hearts. Your heart is your best interpretation, and it is the place where you cannot be manipulated. Everything else, like me being in my heart and then trying to use clairvoyance or whatever psychic thing I'm using to look at something for its energy and its truth, it all first begins in the heart. So you must come into your heart, and you must look at things through the eyes of the heart and hear things through the eyes of the heart. And if it does not register, if it doesn't resonate with heart, with love, then it is not of love. It is not of light. So I'm just going to check if there's anything else. Yeah, the guides, they were just mentioning that there is great light coming across our planet, across Gaia at this time, as we know. And she is singing her song quite loudly. She's singing her song because she's shifting frequencies. There's a lot going on. And so another beneficial thing is the heart, but also your connection to Earth. So being grounded, really connecting into the Earth and connecting into the heartbeat of Gaia. I literally just this morning had an amazing experience where I was meditating and set intention to connect with Gaia, and I could connect into the core of her being, and I was a bit stressed, and it was kind of like she offered me her heartbeat, and it really calmed me and grounded me fairly quickly. And it was just kind of like this calming energy that washed over me. And so perhaps I was meant to share that today for you guys, to encourage you to build your connection with not only your heart, but also the heart of Gaia. She is an anchoring point for us. She helps us to ground and decipher things. When we are grounded, I should say, when we are grounded, we can decipher things. When we're floating around out of our bodies, so in our mind and just thinking a lot and not in being and presence, and if we don't register or feel the earth tone in our bodies, we're very much in a different place energetically. We're in a kind of mental place, and then we tend to try to work things out from a mental place. But energy is best interpreted through the heart and through a feeling place. That doesn't mean that you don't get kind of mental images or mental thoughts and things, but everything wants to travel through here first. So let us remember that through our hearts we cannot be manipulated, and our hearts can tell us the truth, and that Gaia is here for us to listen quietly to her song, to hear our own, and for us to have a relationship with her. And let us remember that no matter what occurs in our experience, we know who we are. You know who you are because it is within you. I feel one of the guides coming through to channel a little bit, but he's just saying that you know who you are because that sound of who you are, which is the sound of truth, the sound of clarity, the sound of wisdom, is in you. It is you. There is nothing outside of you. There's no flying over here and learning about this and flying over there and learning about this. You don't need to do that when you can come into your heart. Use your heart, balance yourself with the earth, and see clear. See clear and trust yourself. If there's one final piece to truth, it comes down to trusting yourself, right? Because people will have differing truths and differing resonances, and I have evidence for this person has evidence for this, look at the evidence. Everybody's got evidence for what their truth might be. The only thing that you can count on in interpreting that is your ability to know your truth, and then to trust your truth, to put your faith in yourself and your ability to know the truth for you and your reality and your path. So please take care of yourselves, everybody, and thank you so much for being here. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and donate if that's in your heart, and I will see you really soon.